Hey guys, I'm Deepthi and in today's video we're going to be talking about the MAC concealer palette, a very popular product, and we're going to be seeing if we have anything that is similar to this, or like in fact at least close to it, even if it is not 100% similar. Because let me clear it out right here, because I feel like this product is unique. Okay, it's unique, and I have quite a few concealer palettes to talk to you guys about today, but nothing in this video matches up to this 100%. Straight up, like if you are looking for that 100% match, I don't think you will find it in today's video. I love this palette and I feel like it's completely worth the hype. There's no other product that I've tried out that is exactly similar to this. So I'm not going to just sit here and tell you guys like, hey, watch this video because I found an exact match. If I haven't found an exact dupe, I'm going to tell you guys right here that I haven't. There are other concealer palettes that I feel like are pretty good, quite similar, but not exactly like the MAC concealer palette. I have this one in the shade medium deep. This is really expensive, but I love it because it just looks like second skin, and when you blend it out it looks beautiful, and it doesn't look like you have a lot of product on. It wears really well, especially underneath my eyes as well, because most products just fade away in a whiff underneath my eyes, but this one lasts for a really long time. It just looks like skin and it blends beautifully. So I have this one in the shade medium deep, which I feel like is a pretty good shade option for my skin tone, and this one has the shade NC40, NW40, NC42, NW43, rich yellow, and burnt coral. So this color corrector is a really good color corrector where I don't feel like it's too orange. That is something I really like I don't like straight up orange color correctors. I feel like this one, it's a lot easier to apply and also to mask the orange of the color corrector with the same the products in this particular palette. I mean, with the shades available in this particular palette itself. So I use NC42 underneath my eyes. Sometimes I feel like it's a little bit too yellow looking, so I use NC40 as well. Like I mix these two, and I mix NC42 and NW40 for around my mouth, and I use this on a daily basis as well, because like I mentioned, it just looks so good. All you have to do is, it takes a little bit of warming up, and then you can apply it. You can blend it with your finger, you can blend it with a brush, which is a liberty with this palette alone, because I don't find that to be the case with the other products that I'm going to be showing you. It is an amazing product, there is no denying that, but it comes with an hefty price tag, and not everybody can afford that much for just one product, or not everybody even wants to spend that much on just like makeup. So in case you fall in any of these categories where you don't have the budget, or you just don't want to spend your money, this is not your priority, I might have a couple of options for you guys. Right now, I'm again mentioning that these are not 100% similar, but they are pretty good products on their own. I'm going to be talking to you guys about the pros and cons of these products. So first up, I'm going to be talking about the least expensive palette in this video, which is the Insight Concealer Palette. So this is what the Insight Concealer Palette looks like. This one retails for 285 rupees. You get 3 shade options. I have this one in the shade medium and as well as deep. So the deep one is of course a little bit too dark for my skin tone, so I use the shade medium, and this color corrector is pretty good. Like it's not comparable to the MAC color corrector, where the MAC one is a nice burnt coral, like an orange shade, but this one is a little lighter and it has more of a salmon undertone to it, but it is pretty good in concealing the darkness, and also it's not too stark, so I like it that way, and it works really well for me because I rarely have intense dark circles and intense pigmentation, but most of the times it's pretty okay, it's manageable for me. And then coming to these concealer shades, none of these concealer shades exactly correspond with the concealer shades that I have in my MAC palette. I feel like most of these do have a little bit of a cooler undertone, sometimes a little bit leaning towards olive undertones as well. Like this one is what I use for underneath my eyes, and I feel like it does lean a little bit on the cooler tone side, but with the color correction and blending it out and everything, eventually it does work pretty well for my skin tone. But I pretty much just stick to these two, and I have used this particular shade for contouring. Coming to the formula of this, it is not as thin as the MAC concealer palette is. This one is a little bit thicker in terms of the way it looks on your skin as well. It's a little bit thick. It can be a little bit cakey for a lot of people. So if you have like mature skin, or you have oily skin, or you have a lot of like visible lines and you feel like products settle onto that and they become a little bit more prominent, this is a palette that could do that. Because I've tried this on a couple of different skin types as well as like age group, and I feel like if you have a little bit of lines, or you have a little bit of oily skin, it just looks bad, straight up bad. So if you have dry skin and you don't really have a lot of lines underneath your eye, like visibly where the product settles onto it, you can try this out. For me, it works pretty well. Maybe in a couple of years I wouldn't say the same about this particular product, but right now it works pretty well for me. I have used this for all over my face, I've used this for around my mouth, and I've used this particular shade for contouring. It works really well for me. Coming to this one, in comparison with the MAC palette, it does have that similar dewy finish that the MAC concealer palette has. It's just that it's a little bit more thick. It can be a little bit more cakey looking underneath your eyes, but it also comes at a fraction of a cost. It's like for 285 rupees, as opposed to, how much is this palette exactly? Because I remember paying full price for this and I was not happy. Okay, it's 4,700 rupees. And now if you have oily skin, I do have some other palettes that you might like, so wait for that. So yeah, that is how I feel like this palette is in comparison to this. So this is not an exact dupe. Maybe I would say it's like pretty good in comparison to the MAC palette. In case you are on a budget, or you just are not looking at, and you're not interested in investing in such an expensive palette, you can try this out. It is really good. It is something that I use regularly as well. You can see the dent in this, and I like it for my skin type. Next up, let's move on to the next affordable palette, which is from Swiss Beauty, and this one is the On The Move concealer palette. And this, I'm not sure what the shade was, but I just picked this up just to see if it is again similar, and I think this was one of their newer launches, and this is what the shade looks like. Okay, so this is what it looks like, and let me show you in comparison with the MAC palette. So you can see it's not like very similar, and also they don't really have that bright yellow shade, which even the Inside concealer palette doesn't have. And this orange color corrector is extremely like stark. It is orange and it is visible, and for me, I felt like I could just use maybe these two shades a little bit more, and these were a little bit darker for my skin tone. So if there is any particular shade for this palette, I will make sure to leave it in the description box below, so make sure you check that out. But I feel like, yeah, that was one of the problems, and I also found this one to be quite sheer, like the MAC concealer palette, where it goes on sheer but it covers just what it has to cover. But this one, it did cover like the darkness underneath my eyes and also the orange pigment of the color corrector, but it was a little bit harder to blend, and it doesn't really blend that easily with your fingers nor with the brush. So I found that to be a little bit hard, and after that it was starting to settle on my under eye area a little differently, and I find that to be the case with most Swiss Beauty like pot cream products that I own, because I feel like they start to split and they look cakey and it looks messy. So I am not a very big fan of this. Maybe it would work for a lot of different skin types, but it's something that certainly doesn't work for me. So I don't recommend this, and I don't feel like it's very similar to the MAC concealer palette. And then another concealer palette. This one is from Purplle. This one is their Covert Operation Guardian concealer palette. What? Okay. So this, I got this one in the shade number 4, I think, Agent 4 is what it's called. And this retails for 775 rupees. And this palette, okay, the shade, it has pretty similar shades. I think I got a shade deeper, or yeah, I think I got a shade deeper. Maybe if I went for a shade lighter, it would probably be exactly like the MAC concealer palette. But they do have like that brightening yellow shade. They have an orange, they have a contour shade and everything. So it is quite similar to the MAC palette in terms of the shade, and I can see that they have quite a few different shade options on the Purplle app right now, and this one is on a discount for 520 rupees. That is a 35% off from the MRP. Okay, so what do I feel about this formula? When you touch this, okay, it's a little bit like thicker. So this is the MAC one. It's smooth looking even on the finger, and it has a little bit of a sheen, whereas this is the Purplle and it feels a little bit thick. It also looks a little bit thick. So when you apply it on your under eye area, I feel like it's a little tricky, especially for me, because I don't really have very dry under eye area, but nor is it too oily. So it doesn't really work for my skin type, and I feel like it cakes up. It starts to look obvious, like I have something on my under eye area. It blends beautifully with brush. I don't quite like the way it applies with my fingers, and it looks cakey almost immediately, and I can't really do much to make it look good. So maybe you could try this out if you have oily skin type. The coverage is really good. I feel like it's quite medium high coverage, very similar to the MAC concealer palette, just that the finish is a lot different. On the MAC side, you can see it has a little bit of a dewiness. It looks dewy, it looks nice, and almost like you don't really have much of a product on, whereas the Purplle side, it's very obvious. It looks like you have something on because of that consistency that it has. Now it depends on your preference again, but I would recommend this for people with oily skin in case you wanted to try it out. Do not try this out if you have dry skin. Trust me, you will regret it. But the shades and everything is very similar. And then another product that is exactly same like the Purplle concealer palette, and I feel like even manufactured in the exact same place. Like I looked at the manufacturer, it's the same manufacturer. This is the Nykaa Skin Genius Conceal and Correct palette. I got this one in the shade medium 02. You can see that this and the Purplle concealer palette are almost exactly the same. So yeah, if you have one, you don't really have to pick up the other one. And I feel like the formula of this is exactly similar to the Purplle one. It is thicker, it does look cakey, and it looks obvious like you have some concealer underneath your eye, and you can only blend this with a brush, and it doesn't really have that much of a sheen like the MAC concealer palette has. It could work really well for people with oily skin, but if you have dry skin type, stay away from this concealer palette. It works really well for me, like this one and the Purplle and everything, around my mouth. Like if I have to conceal something around my mouth, it works really well, and it's what I have right now as well, and it looks really good. But underneath the eyes is where it's tricky, and this doesn't really work that well. Next up, the last product I'm going to be talking to you guys about is from PAC. This one is the PAC Concealer Palette, and this one is in the shade Deep. At the time when I purchased, I couldn't find the shade medium. I'm not sure if it's still available or if it is out of stock. And I feel like this is the closest I could get to the MAC Concealer Palette in terms of the finish, the way it looks, the lasting power, and how it looked like skin. So I really like PAC pot concealers. I feel like they do a really good job in making my skin look like skin, and this one goes on really well underneath the eyes. I can apply this with my fingers as well with a brush. Although the shade is really dark, I would have liked to go for a shade lighter, because of course this is not for my skin tone. I wanted to try out the shade medium, but I couldn't get my hands on it at that time, so I just got the shade Deep. So right now I'm talking about the formula, not so much the shade correspondence, because you can see the orange is extremely dark and they don't really have like a brightening yellow. It has more of like an olive yellow toned concealer right here, and I don't really have an exact shade match here to conceal underneath my eyes nor around my mouth or anything, but it works really well for me for contouring and that purpose. So like I mentioned, the MAC product is one of a kind, but something that could match up to it, like at least get quite close to it. I feel like the PAC concealer does that for me. It doesn't really settle weirdly underneath my eye, doesn't cake up, doesn't have that kind of like a weird product build up. It also doesn't fade away very quickly, and I can blend this with a brush or with my finger alone, and it gives you really good medium coverage. And I feel like that's the case with the MAC concealer as well. Like I'm not sure if I mentioned that in the beginning. It gives really good coverage, and I feel like this one does add up to that. It doesn't really have that much of a sheeny texture. texture, like that sheen is not present, but it does the job of concealing really well and holding up pretty well, and you don't really feel like you have a lot of product underneath the eyes, and it doesn't really look bad over time. So yeah, even though this one is pricey, I feel like this is the closest I could get to the MAC concealer palette, although the Inside concealer palette is something that I still do recommend for people with dry skin. And if you really want something that is very affordable, you could try that out. If you are okay with spending a little bit more money, you could try out the MAC concealer palette, and it is pretty good. That's pretty much everything I wanted to talk to you guys about this concealer palette. Every single time I make these videos, I get comments like, there's nothing like the MAC concealer palette. There's a reason it is like that. Otherwise, everybody would buy the dupes. I don't know what to respond to this, you guys. Like, if you have the budget, buy the MAC one. If you're an ardent lover of that product, stick to it. But not everybody wants to splurge that much, and not everybody can get their hands on it. So I'm here to help you save a little bit of money and also talk about alternatives, options. So that's what my channel is all about. If I were to just sit here and talk about just one product, my channel, my purpose would be pointless. So yeah, let me know what are your thoughts about these concealer palettes. What do you think is the closest to the MAC concealer palette? Let me know in the comment section down below, and let me know if you want to watch dupes of any other product, like one product, and compare all the available dupes for that. Let me know if you want a video like that about any particular product, and I will do that for you guys. So while you're at it, give this video a big thumbs up, and also subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I upload a new video. And I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.